Hello friends, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Rebecca Reel, and today I'm super excited to show you how to machine knit a stunning modern sweater. You can find the pattern for this lovely sweater on my Etsy shop at Reel Studios. Just head over there, download the pattern, and you're ready to get started. I've created two separate patterns. There is a hand knit version and a machine knit version. For this tutorial, I will be demonstrating the machine knit version. Alright, make sure you have all your materials ready and let's get started. Okay, we are using the Brother KX350 to knit this sweater. And first things first is we are going to cast on our desired number of stitches. I prefer to use the E-wrap cast on. Next, we make sure our tension dial is set to 7 and our row counter is at 0, and we are going to knit 13 rows. Alright, and we have knit 13 rows, and the next step is to add the ribbing. The pattern we are going to go in is skip 1 stitch, drop 1 stitch all the way down, and then skip 3 stitches, drop 1 stitch all the way down, and we're going to repeat skip 3, drop 1 for the entirety of this ribbing. And the first one that we skip and drop is, the whole point of that is just to create a symmetrical look on the very other side of our ribbing. So right here you can see we have that stitch we dropped. I'm going to go ahead and remove the weights so we can work with it a little easier, and we're going to drop the stitch all the way down. Now we have dropped the stitch all the way down to the end, to the last loop created by our E-wrap cast on, and we're going to go ahead and put our latch hook into the loop, and we just pull through and then make sure our loop goes past this little notch here. Put our loop into the hook, pull through once more, the stitch past the latch, next stitch into the loop, just like this. And we just continue like that up the rest of the ribbing. Ooh. And then we grab the latch with the needle, and there we go. And that is our very first row of ribbing. We're going to skip 3 and then we will drop 1. So here we have 1, 2, 3. Those are all good, and we will drop this stitch. Leave it up to the last loop. Put your latch tool into the loop and did what you did in the last row. Don't worry if this takes a while to get used to this action. It feels kind of weird and clunky the first times doing it. My main trick is I keep my finger on this stitch that's in my hook so that it doesn't go slip off, and so that it stays beyond this latch so that I know it will correctly pick up the next stitch. Alright, and then we will once again skip 3 and latch hook up another row, skip 3, latch hook up another row, all the way to the end, and you should have this sort of ending on the other edge with a normal row and then a weird row that you've created. We have finished our ribbing and reattached our weights, and the next step is going to be continuing knitting just in regular stockinette stitch until our row counter, which currently reads 13, will reach 80. So that means we are going to knit 67 rows in stockinette stitch. Now that we are on RC equals 80, I like to add these little stitch markers in on the first and last stitch of the panel so that when you're seaming it up later, you know exactly where the armhole starts. Now for the next 20 rows, we are going to be using a 2-step decrease to decrease 1 stitch on both sides of the panel. To increase 1 after we've knit 2, we will follow the following steps. Find the 3rd stitch, transfer it to the right, transfer these two in 1. And that's how you make a simple 2-step decrease. We have finished our 20 rows of decreases, and now we will be working on the neck shaping. To do that, we need to change our settings on our carriage to hold. So essentially push these levers up until they are in line with the H. Other knitting machines will have a very similar designation. So whatever the H is, set your machine to that, and we are going to keep the tension the same. You might be asking, where's the rest of the sweater? Well, I just wasn't happy with how the video for this section turned out, and I'm redoing it because I want it to be good. And also I think that this is a very crucial step, so I'm not like just leaving you guys in the dark for this section. So we are going to work on casting off our center 11 stitches. So should we immediately make a mistake? Okay. And again. Okay, so we've cast off our center 11. Why did I do an extra one on the right? Because when I originally made this sweater, I had an extra stitch on the right because it's an odd cast on number. Right, let's keep in mind that these 11 are the 11 we are going to be casting off, but nevertheless, we do need to put the entire left side on hold. So they're on hold too. Make sure your carriage is on hold and we will knit 1. All right, now we're gonna put these back into work, the 11 that we wanna cast off. I'm also gonna move this under here, just so it doesn't get in the way. This is the first stitch we wanna bind off. This is its neighbor. We're gonna take its neighbor, move it onto our first bind off stitch, move them both back to the original needle. And then we will take our working yarn, put it into our needle, and cast off like that. And then we will repeat the same process for the rest. Except, instead this time of just pulling through, what I'm actually going to do is push this needle out and wrap it around. That will help keep our cast-offs even and give us a little bit more stretchiness when we cast off, because you don't want a super tight neckline. It's not good. And the reason I don't do it with the first stitch is, well, personal preference, to be honest, but also because there's just a little bit of pulling that happens on that first stitch, and I like to make sure it's extra secure. Right. Now we can drop these guys. Okay. I like to keep these guys on the same needle. I just think it works better that way. It won't drop if you have it like that, and you don't necessarily need to knit them together. You can if you want to. I think it just looks more cohesive because this stitch ends up getting tucked behind this one, whereas it kind of bunches if they're not together. But yeah, now you have dropped all of your lovely center stitches. Make sure you push this one back out all the way, and then we will take our carriage, move it back to the right. Physically pick up your carriage, don't drag it across, that will mess up what you're working on. We essentially want to switcheroo which needles are out like this and which needles are in like this. So push these all out, use your transfer tool to put these back in. And now we knit across the remaining row. It's also helpful to make sure your yarn is on top like this. And there you go. Let's set our row counter to 0, and then we will start decreasing on the inner collar section once every 2 rows. This is going to be very similar as decreasing for the armholes, just from the inside outwards. So I will go ahead and show you. Let's knit 2 rows. 1, 2. Remember, we're still on hold, that's why these guys didn't knit, and you need to make sure that you bring your carriage all the way over so this triggers and you can see exactly where you're at. So we knit 2, and now we want to use our decrease to decrease 1. Find the 3rd stitch, transfer it to the right, transfer these 2 in 1. We've knit 24 rows, and now we're going to start increasing on this side. We're going to repeat this pattern 11 times. It starts with knitting 2 rows, and then we're going to do a fully fashioned increase. To take our 2 outward stitches, move them over 1, take the stitch to the left, the little purl bump there, and attach it to the needle that we are adding in. And we are going to repeat that a total of 11 times. So this will be 1, so we'll do it 10 more times. Now we want to cut our working yarn and knit with waste yarn to cast off these remaining ones. So here's my waste yarn. Always use a contrasting color so it's easy to work with later. I like to leave a few inches. This is definitely more than I need, but it's better to have more than less. Because we don't really care too much if that unravels. We don't obviously want it to unravel completely, but if the first 2 rows do, no big deal. And you can see that we have done the left half of our neck hole. Now we want to move our carriage back to the right side of our machine. We take our carriage out of hold, grab our working yarn, and now we'll just repeat what we did on the left side, now on the right side of the panel. So we have finished repeating what we did on the left side on the right. Now we want to knit 1, and now we are going to create those extra stitches that we cast off here. So go ahead and put 7 stitches into work, and then using our working yarn we are going to create an E-wrap cast on. Then we are going to knit our stitches 3 times and cast off with waste yarn. This is what the front of our sweater is looking like right now with its lovely neckline. You can see that it's rolling up on the edges and on the bottom. That's normal. That won't go away until later when we soak the fibers to get them to relax. And here is the back. Once we add the extra 2 rows here to equal the rows that we created here for the end of the collar, these will line up perfectly, and we will have our nicely draped collar. So we've taken our piece and we put it back onto the needles. Specifically, this is the collar section. So it's actually, none of it is raw stitches. It's all picked up around the collar, and I picked up 2, skipped 1 was the method that I used, and I ended up with 79 at the end. So now you're going to start knitting the ribbing portion of the collar. So an important step to know when you're knitting your ribbing section here is the tension. For this section here, I knit it at a 7, and here I knit it at a 5.5. You could even go to a 5 if you wanted a slightly tighter ribbing, but I wouldn't suggest anything looser than a 5.5 because it can get wrinkly at the top and give kind of a weird fit, and we don't want that. So you just knit the previous stitches that we saw in the last step. You're going to knit 10 rows of them, and then you follow the same pattern as you did on the bottom of the ribbing, where you skip 3, drop 1, and knit those up with the latch hook. I've put the left shoulder back on our needles. As you can see, this is the collar, and here is our right shoulder with the weird little extra bit. And we're just going to knit 2 rows so that it's even with the right shoulder. Okay, now including this little collar nubbin, add the remaining right side to the needles. Okay, this is a really cool point in the knitting because you can see that it looks like a sweater. Like, that's the neck hole. I don't know, I always find this part fun because it's just, it feels like it's coming together. And also, yeah, this is what my knitting looks like a lot of the time. It's not perfect, but it will turn out all right, and so will yours. You've got this. So next I'm going to add this weight to kind of close this up so that when we knit the next couple of rows, there's not a weird gap here. Our 3 extra rows have been knit, and now we are going to mirror what we did here with the increases, where we will decrease 2, 1 on both sides, knit 2 rows, decrease 2, knit 2 rows, which is the opposite of what we did before, where we knit 2 and then increased 2, 1 on each side. So we're going to do that for a total of 20 rows or 10 repeats of those decrease patterns. I like to add a stitch marker in here on both sides of the panel so that later when we're seaming it up, we know exactly where our armhole starts and ends, and so it guarantees that our piece will be much more symmetrical. Next, we are just going to continue following the pattern, and we are going to knit as normal up until the ribbing, and then we will stop and keep talking. Because we were working from top to bottom on the back panel, whereas we were working from bottom to top on the front panel, the ribbing technique is a little different. So we're going to follow the same pattern of skip 1, push 1 out, skip 3, push another into position E, and we're going to do that all the way down. Skip 3, push 1, skip 3, push 1, 1, and we're going to continue like that all the way across. And once we've done that, we are going to hand knit all of these. Instead of dropping them, don't drop these stitches. Instead, we're going to hand knit with waste yarn. And then we knit 13 rows as normal. Okay, so I have my latch hook, and I'm going to find this little purl bump directly beneath the yellow waste yarn. I'm going to insert my latch hook into it. It can be a little finicky. There we go. And I just hang it on the purl bump. And then we want to drop this stitch all the way down. And then as you'll see, our latch hook catches the bump and it keeps it from dropping any farther than it should have. And then we just use our latch hook to purl our way back up. Nope. Okay, and I will show you again right here on this one. Insert my latch hook, let it rest. 1, 2, 3, drop. Drop it all the way down. Our latch hook keeps it from dropping any farther. Remove the waste yarn and ladder your way back up. And just repeat that all the way across. One of the additional purposes of having our little stitch markers here is we know exactly where we're going to pick up stitches for the sleeve. So how I made sure that I picked up the exact number of stitches I wanted is I started on the left and I hooked this stitch that my stitch holder is on to 29 and this one to 30. Because we want to get exactly 59 stitches on our sleeves. The pattern that I used was I would pick up 2, skip 1, pick up 1, skip 1, and some very close variation of that works for picking up stitches. It doesn't need to be perfectly exact. Just try to make it somewhat symmetrical so you don't have like a chunk that's super loose versus a chunk that's really stretched out. As long as you end up with 59 stitches, you should be good. Make sure our row counter is set to 0. Make sure our tension dial is on 7. And we are going to knit 100 rows of regular stockinette. Next, we repeat the same ribbing technique that we used for the back panel on our sleeves. And then finally, we will cast off. A brief note about size inclusivity. So I designed the sweater to be very size inclusive, and being size inclusive is important to me. I think that should just be standard. That shouldn't be something that you have to like decide to do or not to do when you create patterns. it just should be standard because people have different body sizes and everybody should be allowed to enjoy a craft. So the reason that I brought that up is because while I was editing this video, I realized that there's one thing that I forgot, and it is shoulder and arm size. The actual bodice of the sweater does change and is inclusive, but if you're making this sweater and you want to scale the arm size up or down, when you are knitting these top rows here, where there are no increases or decreases, just knit extra or less, depending on what you want to create. If you want to make the arms wider, just knit a few extra rows, and then also take those into account when you are picking up stitches around the sleeve, and that way you can get a bigger sleeve and it can fit you better. So I realized that I messed up on that, and I just wanted to add a little guidance on how, if you wished to alter the pattern, you could do so. So just go ahead and keep that in mind if you'd like to recreate this pattern. Thank you. So all that's left to do is for you to seam up the sweater, block it in some room temperature water, and let it dry, and it is all yours. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really liked making it. This is technically my third video that I posted about how to machine knit things, but it is the first one I ever filmed. So in a sense, it's my very first video. Thank you so much for watching this and for experiencing this with me. I am excited to make more videos like this soon. Thank you so much for all the positive feedback, and I will see you guys later. Bye!